Ladies and gentlemen, the tiny DevOps guy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tiny DevOps podcast, where we talk about dev and ops for small teams. Today, I'm really excited to have special guest Bryan Finster here, who has helped, co-author a minimum viable CD document, which we're going to talk about today, to introduce that to you and talk about what it's for and how you might benefit from it. Welcome, Bryan. Thanks for coming on. Do you mind introducing yourself briefly a little bit? Tell us how you got involved in CD and what kind of work you do.
Yes, I got involved with continuous delivery several years ago when we were trying to pilot it at Walmart. I was in supply chain working on how do we take a really large, entangled, giant mess that delivered every quarter, and how can we deliver that every 2 weeks, and ultimately how do we deliver it even faster than that. And so learned on the job. Also learned that it was a much better way to live in that process. Better outcomes for us as developers and also for the business. And so I've been working ever since then to try to get everybody else on board.
Great. And are you still with Walmart now?
No, I left Walmart after 19 years. I joined a scrappy little company called Defense Unicorns that's working with the U.S. Air Force on Platform 1.
And are you able to implement CD there as well?
Platform 1 is supposed to be a secure CD platform. And I'm actually, along with helping them grow, I'm also working on a tool for the platform, and we deliver changes to that very frequently, multiple times a day.
Very nice. Well, thanks again for coming on. Today I want to talk about minimumcd.org, which is the home of this minimum viable CD document that you and others have put together. But before we dive too much into what's in the document, would you tell us how this document came about? I understand you were at a conference not long ago, and maybe just tell us the story of how this document was born.
Yeah, so I was speaking at DevOps Enterprise Summit, and I frequently talk about continuous delivery to either on LinkedIn or multiple places. And I was sitting at the bar with several other people, and we were talking about some of the misunderstandings people have around a continuous delivery. And I was talking a little bit about the history I'd seen, where you had people who were trying to execute continuous delivery. You had, leadership saying, "Oh, we have a goal. Everyone's going to be doing continuous delivery." And then they roll out a half-baked implementation to teams that haven't done it yet, and things fall apart. And so that could be anything from now you're doing continuous delivery because you have a pipeline, right? You have build and deploy automation. Or you're delivering very frequently, but you're not testing, or you're using Git flow, or you've got a hotfix process, all of these things, right? And it's damaging to the teams. It's damaging to trying to get people to implement CD when they say, "Oh no, CD is too dangerous because of this." We decided that what we really needed to do was just codify in every single context what are the minimum behaviors that would give you the benefits that we know can happen from continuous delivery, and not as you're not good enough to do CD, but if you solve these problems, this will make your team and your organization better. You'll have a better life, right? Mm-hmm. And so we spent several sessions at the bar in birds of feather conversations trying to hammer out the absolute bare minimum, that this is always true, whether you're delivering to an air-gapped network or to the cloud, app store, whatever, that if you do these behaviors, this we would consider the minimum for continuous delivery, so that you would start to see those benefits. That took us about 2 days of those sessions, and started with Google Doc. Then we published it to GitHub, starting getting people to sign on that they agree. And 4 days later, we had Dave Farley's signature on there, which made us very happy because, he literally wrote the book.
Nice. Yeah, that's quite an endorsement then, if you can get the man himself to sign the document, right?
For sure.
Maybe let's take a step back here and talk about what is CD, in more of a conceptual level rather than the details of the document right now. What is continuous delivery? Maybe what's continuous deployment? How do they relate to each other? And what are the benefits that these practices can bring to your team that you didn't see happening with these bad implementations?
Well, at a very high level, continuous delivery is the ability to release the latest changes on demand, that you're always in a releasable state, so that for any reason or no reason at all, you can deploy. Continuous deployment is just the next evolution of that, where the latest changes you make will be released immediately. I have in my past had applications I built where we had both kinds of pipelines running, with continuous deploy in the back end and continuous delivery on the front end, just to control the feature release that way.
So what are the benefits that this provides then to a team? Why would you want to do these things?
Primarily, it's stability. With the ability to get rapid feedback on every single change, that change isn't breaking anything. That means we have a much higher level of confidence in our quality. We also can react rapidly if we have a stability problem in production by rolling forward and addressing it. And from my perspective, I spent my career building high availability 24/7, really expensive downtime applications. And with continuous delivery, when you have that confidence, that means that outages at 3:00 in the morning when you're tired and want to go back to bed are shorter and safer to resolve.
So I already mentioned the website. It's minimumcd.org. If you're interested in looking at the document yourself, it's fairly short. It's easy to read. It's a little bit longer than the Agile Manifesto, but probably shorter than the Agile Principles. So somewhere in that range. It's a fairly digestible document. At the high level, you talk about, it starts with continuous delivery and then continuous integration and trunk-based development. What do you see? How are continuous integration and continuous delivery related to each other? I mean, we always talk about CI/CD as though it's a single noun, but more of a technical level, what's the relationship between these two concepts?
Well, they nest. I mean, continuous delivery is an extension of continuous integration. Continuous integration, you're trying to get rapid feedback on your changes and let that talk to other developers' code. Make sure that code is releasable. Continuous delivery is adding on additional gates to verify your artifact can be released and ultimately release it. And so they are, you don't have to say CI/CD because CD is an extension of CI. It's just continuous delivery. It contains all of these disciplines.
So that's a nice shortcut for everybody listening. You can stop saying CI/CD and just type CD because they have 3 characters every time you want to talk about this.
Yeah, and if you ask Dave Farley about it, he'll rant about it too.
Okay. I've observed many times that people also often have the wrong impression of CI, which I think is similar to the arguments you're making here about CD.
Yeah.
And that is, if you get to a room with 100 developers and you say, how many of you are using CI? Probably 90 will raise their hands. And then you start really drilling down and asking, so how many of you have feature branches that live at most 24 hours? And half the hands go down. And then you ask, how many of you have multiple developers working on the same feature branch? And another half go down. And you drill down and like 2 people's hands are left over that are actually doing continuous integration. And there's this, I perceive, and I would love to hear your response. I perceive that there's this problem that we see a CI tool, a pipeline, and think that is CI. And if you have the pipeline in place, then you've accomplished all that there is to do with CI. And I think that you're saying that we have the same problem with CD. You have a CD pipeline in place, and you think you're done. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, very much so. And I've seen that repeatedly. Oh, we do CI because we have Jenkins. No, Jenkins is just the tool. CI is the behavior. And you're right. I mean, the discipline of the true behavior of CI is where you get the benefits from. You don't get the benefits just because you have automation to run your tests. it really takes the lessons that you have to learn to break code down small enough so that you can have branches that code I wrote today goes on the trunk today, and as far as I know is releasable. It's critical. People, and this is the thing, is that people, if they keep aiming for the wrong target, they never see the benefit, and then it's just it's more buzzwordy stuff like that Agile and DevOps stuff, right? Well, this is a real engineering discipline. This isn't principles. This isn't vague things. This is an actual engineering discipline that we have to be good at.
So if somebody goes to read this document and they discover that they're not doing minimum viable CD yet, they're missing several of the points here, what should they do? How do they respond to this?
I think I would hope that they did the same thing that we did originally. We were trying to learn how to do continuous delivery because we had, pipelines, we had automation available to us. And literally on that very first team, I wrote down, the rules for continuous integration. Just start there, right? Not even delivery, just continuous integration. And then every day, why can't we do this? What's the next problem we need to solve? And then we just hammer through the list of problems to solve until we could do that. And then further on, all right, now why can't we deploy multiple times a day? Let's solve that problem. And then we just hammered through that list. And some of it was internal to the team, some was external to the team. And we just hammered through it. And, having that conversation and using this as the focal point for a continuous improvement process instead of, our meetings are too long. Okay, I mean, that's great. But what are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to deliver better. So using this as the tool for continuous improvement, I found very effective, both on that first team and then on when I was leading the DevOps Dojo at Walmart. Look at it as since this is the minimum, we're not doing it. We don't need to feel bad. We just need to feel bad if we stop before we are.
That's really important. Don't feel bad if you're not doing this. It's a goal. Just because you aren't there yet doesn't mean that you're a bad team or a bad person or a bad manager. Just improve. Work on improvement, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So continuous integration, you say, or continuous delivery builds on and extends continuous integration. And then next down on the list, you have trunk-based development. Is that the same relationship?
Yeah. If you look at any of the literature on continuous integration, it'll say that you should be doing trunk-based development. Paul Hammond actually wrote a book recently called Trunk-Based Development, and he shows that relationship that CI depends on trunk-based development. And I've had people tell me they're doing CI and they're using a complicated branching structure, and they're not really integrating the code. And they're not verifying, they have a releasable artifact because they're integrating to a developed branch, but they're not releasing the developed branch. And the build on the trunk is a different artifact than what they're building on the developed branch. And if you're doing that continuous integration flow at a branch that's not the trunk, all you're doing is adding an extra merge that adds an extra manual touch point that adds an extra place where we can create defects without any added value. Now, I have a lot of people tell me, well, we want to make sure the trunk is always releasable and it's got to be clean. Your tests make sure it's clean, right? That's how you make sure it's clean. And so when you're confident that you're testing well, which should be the goal, what are you doing with this extra merge, this extra thing to inject defects into the delivered artifact?
There are two ways, broadly speaking, to do trunk-based development, if I'm not mistaken. The one is just short-lived feature branches, possibly accompanied by pull requests. And the other is you literally push directly to trunk. Does this depend on either one of those, or do both approaches work?
No, both are valid. One requires more effort than the other. And I've talked to Dave about this a little bit because he's a real big advocate of going directly to the trunk. And I've worked in environments where compliance was a really important thing, and we had to have auditable code review for audit. And so we would mandate that you use branch and merge instead of direct to trunk. Now, there are ways to also get that audible trail going direct to trunk. It just depends on how you set up how you're capturing that and what gates you put in the pipeline to make sure that's actually happening. So either one is viable. I think that if you're going direct to trunk, you really should be pair programming 100%. If you're not pair programming, you really need to branch and merge, because then you have a good code review process. But pair programming is going to get you delivered faster. It just feels slower because there's fewer keyboards, I guess.
All right. So we've kind of worked our way backwards from continuous delivery to continuous integration to trunk-based development. Are there any other foundations that we build on, or is that kind of the starting point?
You really should test your code. I mean, you can't even start this if you have the attitude that I'm a coder and someone else tests. You just can't even. You can't, right? Trunk-based development absolutely 100% depends that you're testing your code.
And what if you're in a place now where you're not testing your code? Maybe you have 0% or well under 50% test coverage on your entire project. What's the first step? Do you need to build up that test suite first, or can you start with trunk-based development and just do tests maybe for new features, or how do you approach that problem?
Yeah, I've lived this problem personally, and I've done a lot of research on how to help my team and other teams get past this problem. You've got 100% untested code base that's running in production. Okay, what's tested in production? You know it works because it's working in production. It's dangerous to go back and try to backfill tests because the code was written in a way where it was not architected to be tested, and so you have to refactor the code to test it. And refactoring without tests is incredibly dangerous. And so the process you use is we have a working agreement. We will no longer push untested code. 100%, if we come through a code review and it's untested, it's rejected. Then the next step is when we get a feature in and we start breaking things down, we document how it's going to work in testable acceptance criteria. And then we use that to slowly refactor the code to be testable. So we refactor the portion of the code that requires the change using those acceptance criteria to verify it's behaving the way we want it to work. And then slowly over time, you start building out tests. Now, you can do trunk-based development just with that working agreement and a focus on, you might want to practice some testing first if you don't even know how to test. But with that working agreement and some knowledge on how to do good functional testing, that's all that's really required. And that was my personal journey as well. I mean, we were working for years where testing was, in production. And we had to get really disciplined at it if we were going to be rolling continuous delivery out across that area. And so we had to dig in and really focus on teaching each other how to test.
At what point? So suppose you have a team that's doing manual testing. Maybe there's some automated testing, but there's also a manual element of testing going on. Is there any room for that in a CD environment? And if so, what does that look like?
I'd say not manual functional testing, right? So there's always room for exploratory testing, usability testing. Those things should be happening in parallel to the pipeline and not as deploy gates. If you are using manual testing for a deploy gate, you really need to automate that and get it out of the way. And the first step that you're going to probably automate that is with end-to-end tests, which are going to be flaky. And then your next priority is to start tackling the flakiness in those tests and get some a test suite that you actually trust. And I've had people say, well, humans can test better than machines. That's just wrong. If you're running a test script as a human, you can't repeat it. A machine can actually repeat it. And if you find a defect in a test script, you can fix the defect once instead of hoping everybody else doesn't implement that defect manually. And so getting your critical, and I'd say not fully, your critical paths tested in the end, and then start building out a real effective test suite that doesn't rely on end-to-end testing to get it done.
What would you say to a team that that has some unique testing requirements. For example, I was talking to somebody recently that builds software related to bicycles, and their testing suite involves physically riding a bicycle around the neighborhood and looking at GPS inputs and stuff like that. Um, I mean, in principle, I can imagine ways to automate that, but it's a huge undertaking. Would you just say that CD just isn't possible in that situation, or is there some wiggle room there for weird corner cases like that?
Well, I mean, that should just be a continuous process, and then you're going to have a controlled release to the your test users, right? Your alpha testers. You have a controlled release of the pipeline. The main thing you're trying to get with continuous delivery is feedback. It doesn't mean that you have to ship every single second to an end user, but you need some sort of real life feedback to verify that you're testing correctly. The only test for a test is production. And delivering to those people riding those bicycles is an important test for production. Now, you want to put some balance there. You don't want to say, okay, we're going to spend the next 3 months riding around on bicycles, right? I mean, how fast can we get this feature out to a broader audience to get better feedback? And that's what it's all about. I need feedback as rapidly as possible to get the quality where I need it.
So, supposing that your team has now accomplished minimum viable CD, is it okay to stop there? Are they done, or what's the next step? What do you do from there?
Oh God, no. No, the goal there is just to show you this is possible. It's to get you over the hump. Teams just don't believe continuous delivery does what CD what we say CD does until they get past the hump. And this is just to get you over that hump. Your goal from then on is hardening the pipeline. Because the very first thing you should do when you're focusing on continuous delivery isn't even to automate everything. It's to write down what defines releasable for us. What do we have to verify to make it releasable? Then you start executing the discipline, get to the minimum level and then focus on how do we add automated gates to verify releasability. And then you deploy and you find out what you did wrong and then you harden the pipeline. If you are an actual product team and you really want to be truly agile and not just do agile ceremonies, then what you're going to do is you're going to deliver, get feedback from production, and your primary product isn't even the thing that you're delivering to production. It's the pipeline. We're going to harden our pipeline and ensure that our artifacts are truly production worthy before we let them go. That pipeline's job is not to deploy. The pipeline's job is to prevent bad things from deploying, and you need to focus on that all the time. And so you start adding things. You start performance testing. That'd be great, wouldn't it? And what sort of chaos testing could we do in the pipeline and not even in production? How do we verify our APIs more effectively? And how do we've got these flaky tests. We can't have flaky tests. How do we re-architect those tests so that they are no longer flaky, drive them down into a lower, faster test, or remove them entirely because they're just not giving us reliable feedback? Right. And so that just continuously improve how we're delivering.
Suppose somebody says to you, Bryan, this is great, but we're doing 15 deployments per day, and we're using GitFlow, and we don't have automated tests yet, but we're still doing 15 deploys per day. So obviously we're doing continuous deployment. How would you respond to somebody who says something like that?
Yeah, but is your life good? I mean, are you sleeping well at night? How many hours are you working a day? How much stress are you under when you go and do that deploy? Right? I mean, how much toil's involved? Can you confidently deploy at 5 p.m. and then take your significant other out while also being on call? Right? If you can't answer, oh yes, then I would say that you really need to improve something. And if you say, oh yeah, we can absolutely do those things, then please tell everybody else in the world how, because I haven't met anybody who can.
Hopefully all listeners will go look at this document. How can others participate? This is on GitHub. I see there's an Improve This Page link. If people are interested in participating and improving this, what can they do?
So we've had several people give contributions. One of the things is we're now translated into Finnish, Spanish, Italian, and French. If you want to submit a translation, please do. You can go on and say, you know what, I agree with this. I want to add my signature. And unlike other things I've seen out there with signatures, there's not a list of we created it and all you other people can sign it. Everybody's equal on here. Some of the creators never got around to it, and so they're pretty far down the list. And so the sequence of signatures has nothing to do with how important you are, except for, honestly, Dave Farley's. I moved his to the top. Yeah, if you want to have a discussion about it, open an issue and let's have a conversation. We've had several conversations about people wanting to improve things, and there were things that, yes, we agree that those are good ideas, and those are things that you should absolutely do, but they're not the absolute bare minimum for continuous delivery. We've had other people suggest wording changes, and we discuss it. Yeah, you know what, that would make a good change. I'll say that we're very careful about changing the primary document of the minimums. Because people agree that that is true. And so we have a very careful process for modifying that. We discuss it intensely. But we also have a page for, resources. If you have a resource that you really think is awesome, send a pull request, add the resource, right? Let's, as a community, let's grow that we agree that this is what continuous delivery should look like. And these are the good things, because it took us years to learn how to do this and to find the good resources versus the bad resources. And this is really what we're trying to do, is share. You don't have to go on that journey and start from scratch. We're trying to jumpstart you ahead so that we can all be on a level playing field.
I'd love to hear some of the common objections you've heard to CD that you aim to address with this document.
Well, one of the most common, I think, is that either we're too busy or too complex, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with people thinking it's too hard to start. And that was part of it. This is the simple, right? This is the baseline behaviors. There's not a maturity model to it, though you can look at this as a checklist. We are or not doing these things. But doing all those things in no way makes you good. It just makes you minimum. But that's really the primary objection, is that, well, we're a special case and continuous delivery doesn't apply to us. It absolutely applies in every case. I'm looking right now at things we're trying to do for how do we do CD on a submarine that's underway, right? So I've done continuous delivery on giant enterprise systems. I've done continuous delivery on small things deploying to the cloud. And I've seen CD being done to embedded systems. I have yet to see a case where I can't say, okay, well, I know how to architect a pipeline to get this done, and CI is always true.
Oh, here's one that I hear a lot. Our end users need to be informed before changes happen. How do you make that compatible with CD?
Feature flags. We're trying to. We need to get changes into production to verify that they'll run in production. We need to get feedback as rapidly as possible. But we also have the reality of that marketing is a thing, and we need to control releases so that we can have a launch of something. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of the applications you have on your phone have features that you're not seeing. Other people are seeing them. And then they have a marketing release and they'll release new features. And that's just how it works, is that the minimum of CD doesn't include decoupling release from deploy. Release from deploy. But you should. That should be something early on you're looking at, is we need to be able to deploy a change without exposing the change. And again, that works in every environment.
That answer addresses another one that I hear a lot, which is we're working on a big feature that is not ready to be deployed yet.
Well, yes, that's the solution for that. But I think there's more of a mindset shift that has to happen as well. You should be terrified of a big change. Big changes are not a thing. You don't do giant refactorings. You don't do giant feature releases. The size of change is going to be directly proportional to the size of the explosion when things break, because things will break. And I've had this conversation before with like InfoSec. When do I need to go have a security review of my application? Well, after you do a big change. Okay, so never. I never have to have another security review, which again goes, I think it's a whole other subject about security theater, but I never have to have another security review because I don't make big changes. I'm evolving my application in very small steps every single day. And that's also an engineering problem that you need to solve, is that you may have to make a big change that could be breaking. You might have to upgrade a version of your baseline architecture. And you need to figure out how to do that in small steps very, very frequently to make sure that you're always releasable.
What do you say to this person who says our tests are too slow? It takes 8 hours to run a test suite or something like that.
Yeah. I would say that you need to focus on improving your pipeline, that you should use that pipeline duration as a key metric for the health of your delivery, and that you should focus on why are tests taking so slow, taking so much time? How do we re-architect our tests so that they're faster? Are we over-testing? Are we testing a whole bunch at the end instead of testing things more at the beginning? Is our architecture so terrible that the only way we can effectively test is with end-to-end tests? So how do we decouple the architecture around clean domain boundaries so that we can test more efficiently and release better, right? Because what'll happen, and this is a huge risk, if it takes us 8 hours to release a change, and we have a high availability system, and we have something that has to be fixed, or there's a security breach and there's something that has to be fixed now, then what's going to happen is you'll bypass all your quality processes to get it out and put yourself in a worse situation. That you need to have that fast pipeline, not just so that you get fast feedback, but so that you can fix production fast with the safest possible method.
Good. I think I'm through my list of questions. What else would you like to add? The floor is yours.
I think I just want to reiterate that I've been a developer for a lot of years. I have not stopped developing. I just talk about my experiences. I've done it for relatively small companies, and for, the third largest army in the world, Walmart. I've, running the dojo at Walmart, I saw many different use cases that a lot of people have to go to different companies to see. And I've never seen anything where continuous delivery wasn't the right answer. Now, is that confirmation bias? Maybe, but except that we've actually implemented it in those situations, and it made the team's life better, universally. So, if anybody can show me a situation where this is not the right answer, please do. I'd love to be educated, but I've yet to see it. And I like a challenge. I'm happy to go and talk about how we can architect a pipeline for that and change the team's behavior to make everything better. But I'd be happy for someone to stump me because I'd learned something.
Lovely. So if somebody has that challenge ready for you, how can they get a hold of you to challenge you?
Oh, they can reach me on LinkedIn. Happy to talk to them. Also, I've got a series of blogs that are kind of light rants called 5 Minute DevOps on Medium. And so if you just go to bdfenced.medium.com, you can see my blogs out there. And I talk about lots of different topics around delivery, including team organization. And I've got some things based off of real life that are fun.
Wonderful. Well, we'll have links to both your LinkedIn then and your Medium blog in the show notes. Thanks so much for coming on, Bryan. This was a good conversation. I think it's really important to draw attention to the truth behind this otherwise fuzzy concept of continuous delivery and 1,000 other buzzwords in our industry. So thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, John. And I do agree. I think the things that aren't fuzzy should not be fuzzy.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll have links to the document and the books and Bryan's contact info in the show notes. Until next time.